The prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Wednesday, March 20th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my son, my co-host, fellow investigator Joe Hagmann. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news analysis and very vital information as we get closer to the end game scenario of what is about to take place or what will be taking place here in these United States and globally. You know, we have a finite number of shows left, I believe, and it's because of what is coming, what's on the event horizon. At any rate, folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. That's our normal broadcasting time, 8 to 11 Eastern. That's p.m. And our home base is on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. We also simulcast in high-def video compliments of the Christians United Broadcasting Network. You can find us there in high-def video at HomelandSecurityUS1.tk. Joe, it's great to be in studio with you today.
Glad to be here. We had a productive day in the studio, working out some things, trying to schedule some different guests, and going through news that's important, and discussing a huge number of different topics and issues, from economic issues, what's going on in Cyprus, to what Ben Bernanke said today, what is happening in Syria, and what the U.S. lawmakers are saying about this. We're also seeing Obama's trip to Israel is being covered, I would say much over coverage. Interesting, his limo broke down today, and he had to be taken by helicopter, and he planted a tree, what was it? I forget the name of the Mongolia tree. And Israel is going to dig it up, or dug it up as soon as he left. But there's a lot of other news we're going to get into tonight. Last night,
what did you just call that? It's a magnolia tree, I think, right?
Magnolia tree, yeah. Did they say magnolia?
I don't know. You know, I don't know what I heard, actually. I don't know, but that's okay. All right.
Yeah. So Obama is... Nothing was done in the name of a peace treaty, per se, that a lot of people thought was going to come from this. And that's good. I'm glad this was really a non-event, but at the same time, an interesting piece of information coming out of there is the plans for Iran. And they say that there are pretty much a plan to attack Iran. It's there. All they have to do is act on it or set it in motion. And I find that to be... pretty troubling, especially if it would be we would be the initiators of that conflict. I see a huge problem with that. But at any rate, we got a lot to get into tonight. We're going to be taking your calls during the third hour. And the first 2 hours, we have some news clips and articles to get to. And we are going to do that. I'd like to, if I can, we can start with some older news. I know we didn't get a chance to cover the 7 Marines that were killed in an explosion during training exercises at an Army depot in Nevada. I'm going to play this is a 1.5 minute news clip explaining what happened.
We start this morning, though, with some breaking news out of Nevada.
where at least 6 U.S. Marines have been killed and 8 more wounded in an explosion that occurred during a training exercise overnight. It occurred at the Army's Hawthorne Depot, an ammunition storage facility in western Nevada. NBC's chief Pentagon correspondent Jim Miklaszewski joins me now with the very latest. Jim, reading this report, was this an accident or did somebody do something wrong?
Well, it was clearly an accident, according to U.S. military officials, who say that the 6 Marines were killed and 8 others wounded during a live-fire training exercise at that Hawthorne Army Depot in far western Nevada shortly after midnight early this morning. Now, according to the officials, there are several different accounts. One, that as the Marines loaded the mortar, a 16-millimeter mortar shell, into the firing tube, it exploded then. Another report says that the round may have exploded as the Marines were picking it up and taking it to the mortar tube. Now, according to officials, 4 of the Marines were killed instantaneously. 2 others died while waiting to be medevaced out. Out of the 8 that were injured, 2 are reported to be in critical condition. They've been taken to a trauma center in Reno, Nevada, while the 6 others have been taken to a local hospital there in Hawthorne. The accident is obviously under investigation, but this is a grim reminder, that these military operations are a very risky, dangerous business, whether in or out of a combat zone, Luke.
Jim Miklaszewski with that breaking news for us from the Pentagon. Thanks so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
So there you have it. A depot exploded and 7 Marines are dead now. Why is this important aside from the fact that U.S. Military personnel suffered a serious loss is that these urban military training drills that have been ongoing. We got news from a few people last night talking about things happening. And if you want to start and...
Yeah, I just want to tell you this about the urban training. It's interesting because I'd spoken to my contact within the intelligence community, but more importantly, I had spoken to someone today who lives in the metropolitan Pittsburgh area who said, there were 2 Apache helicopters that were flying extremely low. As a matter of fact, the individual who witnessed these Apaches could see the pilots. Now, it's unknown if these Apaches were carrying arms or exactly what was on board, but they were flying low and rapid and in somewhat formation following the Allegheny River in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then turning onto the Monongahela River in Pittsburgh. The information I have, my question was, what are they doing flying in Pittsburgh? Apache helicopters when there are no bases for these in close proximity. Well, the best answer I got was this. Let me just, the long and short of it is, they're doing urban training because they will be fighting in urban areas in the United States, and you fight or you train for the fight. That's the information I got, folks, and that's pretty sobering when you think about it. Go ahead, Joe.
I just want to say today I came across something where they were talking about a specific. It was a name that they had a drill, and it was around a base in near Pittsburgh. Okay, let's see. I just found this from Pittsburgh and talking about the same thing. Oh, that's nice. This is unavailable, but the thing says here, Apache helicopter in Pittsburgh, and but there was a name that they were talking about this drill. You know how they put these names on the
right
drill,
exactly,
operation, yes. Whatever. Well,
right.
That's what I saw. So I'm going to try to find that to see if that's something that's ongoing right now, an actual named drill happening in Pittsburgh. Okay. But we have reports of weird helicopters from Florida. I got an email from somebody yesterday talking about, planes circling around. There have been numerous reports of urban training operations conducted by the military, and they are continuing, and they will continue as part of their, they have to train. They're training for real life scenarios. They're not training to go to Iraq or Afghanistan like most people say. There are United States regional urban task forces that will go into these areas. These are the people who are training. They're never going to be going overseas. Their specific duty is to train for combat in the United States. That's the stated training goal by the government and the Department of the Army itself.
Exactly. We have to understand, and I mean, people need to understand that right now, the military, the Department of Homeland Security, the paramilitarization of the police forces, they're all training, getting ready for an event on the horizon. What you are seeing, as you're seeing the urban combat exercises, regardless of what city, this is a conditioning factor of the population. So you get used to seeing paramilitary and military equipment. This is what we're seeing. Now, a couple of other things, Joe, as the program unfolds here, a couple of things that I want to get into and explain, because last night we had Steve Quayle on. It was a great show, by the way. We had a record number of listeners last night. And, of course, we announced, and I'll just re-announce this again on Friday, the financial insider that has been providing Steve Quayle with a lot of accurate, deadly accurate information is going to be on with us from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern time, along with Steve. Now Steve's going to bring him on, and this financial insider is going to spend 2 hours explaining what's going on with the world economic system. But tonight, in preparation for that, we've done a lot of research here, folks. The Pope, Francis I. We're going to get into some discussion about the Pope. Not Catholicism, not Roman Catholicism, but about the hierarchy of the papacy and why we're seeing what we're seeing with the papacy. I just want to give you a little, whet your appetite here a little bit. It has a lot to do with us having currently 2 black popes and 2 white popes.
And we're not talking about skin color.
Correct. For the first time in history, it's unprecedented. And based on our research, what we believe is taking place, why we're seeing what we're seeing, and how this is playing right in, how this has been orchestrated to play right into this single global governance system that we're about to witness firsthand, and about precisely how the world is going to be set up into 10 economic or trade regions. But more importantly, or equally important, I should say, is how NAFTA and GATT have played into this, China's role into this, the buildup of China. And going back to the papacy, what the papacy means for North America, as there is this massive reallocation of wealth into South America, or there will be, as this papacy Vatican Bank, the hierarchy continues. So there's this the China factor. Oh, and not to leave anything out. How the Olympics in 2008, as well as 2012, but specifically in 2008, telegraphed what's taking place with China today. So this is what we're going to be talking about as the program progresses. And we're going to be connecting some dots, and it's going to be an exceptional, grab your notebooks, because there's a lot of information to be had as well. And also talking a little bit about the Jesuits and the papacy. Once again, we're talking about hierarchies, politics, not belief systems. and how these things have been. Go ahead.
What we know is the reports from all the news media outlets when the Pope was selected, one of their main points, they listed his age, they listed the name he took, where he was from, and he was a Jesuit. Pretty much any news report you watched about the Pope or whatever channel you were watching, if it was live, I'm sure they mentioned the fact that he was a Jesuit.
Exactly.
So we are trying to better understand ourselves, what that means, why is that important, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. What you said about China, I want to just hit on this piece of news while talking about China. 336 million abortions in the last 40 years in China. Communist China has performed an estimated 336 million abortions over the last 4 decades as part of its enforced family planning policy. According to figures recently released by the country's health ministry, the numbers were published in the March 15th Financial Times, which reported since China first began encouraging couples, encouraging is in quotation marks, because they kill the babies or kidnap them if you have more than you're supposed to. Encouraging couples to limit the size of their families, it has also performed 196 million sterilizations and has inserted 403 million devices, a normal birth control procedure in the West, but one that local officials often force on women in China, reported the Times. While measured efforts to limit the size of families were first implemented in 1971, by the end of the decade, the campaign had morphed into China's notorious one-child policy that forced abortion and sterilization for couples who don't comply. The Chinese government has justified the policy by estimating without such restrictions, the country's population of 1.3 billion would be 30% larger. And I'll put a link to this in the chat room. This is from a New American. I want, if we can, maybe it's too early in the program, but there's an audio clip that we played, not on air, but yesterday, Dad, we listened to this. It was an old Earl, The Strangest Secret in the World. It's a 10-minute audio. Very insightful, and it goes into a lot of personal spirituality and how
Right.
the perception. So I didn't tell you before the show that I had that up on cue. So we can play it whenever you think it's appropriate, but definitely gonna play that tonight.
Okay, what we can do is we can saddle the top of the hour break with that as other stations come in at that time. But that would be an appropriate time, I think. Now boy, you had mentioned China and that everything is connecting. All of the dots are converging. I want to say this as well about China. They've got skin in the game with respect to Syria and Iran, both technologically and also economically, as does Russia. Folks, have you heard the news? We've been talking about this. The news about the Syrian chemical weapons. Joe, we had talked about this earlier in the day. There's been a chemical weapons attack reported in Syria. And remember what we had said during our earlier programs. Any chemical weapons attacks can be most likely traced back to Benghazi, to the extent that we are, and this is very important, we are training and assisting the anti-Assad rebels in the use of chemical weapons, or at least training the trainers.
Yeah, the U.S. is backing rebels and has done so with the overthrow of the Libyan government, overthrow of the Egyptian government, and now the use of chemical weapons is being, they say, the article says, as the Assad government and the opposition throw out accusations over the use of chemical weapons, and the U.S. is assessing the situation, 2 U.S. senators are urging the president to go to war. Guess who those are?
I give up.
McCain and Graham.
Oh, yes. That must be because I have got papers right here. McCain and Graham push for the United States to invade Syria. The Syrian government.
Yeah.
This is. I understand. The general theory of this. I understand the fact that there's genocide taking place, or there are issues taking place all over the world now. I mean, the world is afire.
It's the battlefield.
Well, according to Lindsey Graham, it sure is, as is the United States of America. But all of this is part of this new world, one world order plan. See, and all of these people they're globalists that are engaged in this backing and this orchestration of this. This is all part of it. You know, I mean, how much clearer? We mentioned Syria chemical weapons. We're going to get into that in a second. But did you notice the cover of the Time magazine cover with Pope Francis on it? New World Pope. I mean, how much clearer could this be? This is a huge game of chess, global chess, that was set, that began this multi-dimensional, multinational chess game that began long ago, involving these, well, the families and these organizations, these groups that had set out to take over the world, essentially, to place it all under a single global governance. And everything you're seeing, including but not limited to the attacks, the alleged chemical weapons attack in Syria, the papacy, the massive reallocation of wealth, China, Russia, the United States, Israel, all of this is all part of this grand scheme for a global governance. Again, we're going to be getting into how all of this ties together as the show progresses. But with respect to McCain and Graham pushing to invade Syria, Obama has said that the use of weapons of mass destruction, that is chemical weapons, by Assad is a red line for him that will have consequences. Well, let me tell you something. Remember us telling you a couple of months ago that Syria was Russia's red line. If NATO and America become involved in the Syrian war, the Syrian conflict, we will be at war not only with Syrian forces, but Russian forces, Iranian forces by proxy, Russia, and of course, to a lesser extent, the Chinese, who have skin in this game. We are at the precipice of a new global conflict. This is World War III, folks. I guarantee you. And of course, what does the Bible say about Damascus? What was that verse in Isaiah? Damascus
will become a ruinous heap.
That's right. We're about to see this take place in our lifetime. And you see all of this economic news that we're seeing is exactly related to this global war.
Now, let's go back. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Just take a week back. This from the Free Beacon. EU may start training and equipping Syrian rebels along with the U.S., as the U.S., we know, has already done this. The U.S. will increase aid to the Syrian opposition, the White House has announced. Europe may follow suit by increasing aid to the Free Syrian Army, a.k.a. Al-Qaeda. The decision is expected after a key conference on Syria in Rome. We will continue to provide assistance to the Syrian people, to the Syrian opposition. We will continue to increase the assistance in the effort to bring about a post-Assad Syria, Jay Carney said in a statement. Now,
You know what, Joe?
weeks ago,
Well, just real quick, just to butt in here, isn't it funny? When Obama came into office, everything ripped into high gear. This so-called Arab Spring. Egypt went down. Mubarak went down. We had
Tunisia,
Tunisia, and of course Libya with Gaddafi go down. Okay, and
we
this
had
is
other leadership changes in Africa that were done through elections. Some were well, we'll just say rigged elections. There was a new president elected in Ethiopia last fall. There was lots of leadership changes in the Middle East war zone that we are seeing today.
now. Let me throw in one other leadership change caused by the death of Hugo Chavez. What happened economically as soon as Chavez took the long dirt nap after he expired? What happened to the Venezuelan economy? The interest rates were all of a sudden, for their sovereign debt, were lowered. So, once again, what we're witnessing, for those people who disbelieve in the orchestration of different things and the implementation of a single global governance by way of economy and war, what we're witnessing in all of this is the acceleration to this one world order. And why do I keep bringing this up? For crying out loud, because this is the end game. This is for all the marbles. This is the end game scenario.
We will see Damascus destroyed. We will see the war escalate in Syria, along with other nations, as you mentioned, Turkey, and as you say, Russia as a proxy. And, things are escalating with North Korea, at least the rhetoric. I know North Korea did a drone test simulating a strike on a South Korean target today. Also, they have been releasing videos of them dropping bombs on the United States. Acting very hostile, calling the United States an enemy, saying that they're going to launch a nuclear strike on the U.S. at any moment.
Well, here again, we're seeing all of this play out almost as if we're looking at a chessboard. For Lindsey Graham and John McCain to act the way they acted after Ron Paul's filibuster, to see Lindsey Graham and John McCain push for the U.S. to invade Syria.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all. These are the biggest neocon congressmen we have. They push for the National Defense Authorization Act. Graham was the one that labeled said the U.S. as the battlefield. And you don't get a lawyer. You shut up and you get killed if you are suspected to be of the enemy forces. John McCain introduced the Enemy Belligerent Act, which basically said you can have your rights taken away if you commit a belligerent act against the United States. And that could be an attitude, Exactly. It doesn't have to be anything to do with an act of violence.
That's very true. And we're also going to talk tonight a little bit about Obama's visit to Israel. I just want to say this. People talk about the 1967 lines. I just want to make sure people understand this. And like I said, folks, please, tonight might be a good night to start taking notes if you can, because we're going to be covering a lot of information. But the 1967 lines, since Obama is over in Israel right now, and we're going to be talking about the significance of his visit and what's taking place, but just so people understand that no border ever existed between Israel, the West Bank, and Jordan before the 1967 war. These are not lines. These are not geographical lines. These lines were established. The initial lines were established. The initial borders, that is, were established on April 3rd, 1949 by Article 3, I believe it is, of the Israel-Jordan Armistice Agreement. These are not borders, but armistice lines. They're temporary boundaries. subject to subsequent negotiation. The armistice lines are not immaterial in international law in terms of land rights and the final status agreements, whereas borders can be legally secured and defined. Now, there, boy, I'll tell you, ADL, the ADL reports in November of 2011, about 35 million adults in the U.S., or I'm sorry, about 35 million adults hold deep anti-Semitic views, which is an increase of 3% from 2009. Don't forget, folks, in Brooklyn, where Joe and I spent a lot of time working, they found the swastikas painted on the facades of the Jackson Heights and East Elmhurst libraries, branches of the Queen's Library and the synagogues there. What we're seeing systematically is in addition to everything else, we're seeing the demonization of both Christians and Jews. Just to reaffirm that, we're seeing the demonization of both Christians and Jews in this bigger war and in this run-up to this single one-world government.
I got some audio on that. Patriots labeled hate groups and terrorists. This is more from Mark Pollock. This is a CNN interview, and they get into the Christian element of this a little bit more. So we're going to go to this. It's about an 8-minute clip, but it's worth the listen. And listen closely to the words that these people use, because and also there is a accusation against the Southern Poverty Law Center that really goes unaddressed. But just take a listen to this. It will give you an insight into what not just this Mark Pollock from the Southern Poverty Law Center thinks or doesn't think, but this is what they put out. But this is the Department of Justice mouthpiece, the Obama administration's mouthpiece, a way to say it without themselves doing it.
Hate in America. Oberlin College in Ohio suspended classes this week after a student reported seeing someone dressed in Ku Klux Klan robes. It follows a string of recent hate incidents on campus. Now, last August, a 40-year-old ex-soldier turned white supremacist rocker shot up a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, killing 6 people. You'll remember that. A few weeks later, a group of Georgia men was linked to an anti-government plot to assassinate President Obama. And it's all part of what the Southern Poverty Law Center says is a disturbing trend. The group's new study says the number of anti-government groups is at an all-time high, and many are driven by their fear that the government will strip them of their rights. But the study's findings, do they add up? Out front tonight, Mark Potok is the author of the report and a senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Michael Medved is a conservative commentator for Salem Radio, and John Avalon is a CNN contributor and the author of Wingnuts, How the Lunatic Fringe is Hijacking America, which is a suitable title for our discussion tonight. Thanks to all of you. Mark, let me start with you. You're the author of the report. It focuses on so-called patriot groups, which you describe as conspiracy-minded, anti-government, and on the radical right. Now, back in 2012, that was what the study counted, you looked at 1,360 so-called patriot groups on the radical right, an increase of 813% since 2008, right before President Obama took office. But lots of questions are coming up today, Mark, about how you define these groups. Give me some sense of how you define these patriot, extremist, right-wing groups.
Sure, Ellie. What the groups are the very same groups that we all used to call the militia groups back in the 1990s. They more normally describe themselves as patriot organizations or Christian patriot organizations. You know, essentially what holds these groups together, what kind of makes them a movement, is that they all subscribe to a conspiracy theory which goes more or less as follows. They believe that the federal government has a secret plan to impose martial law in this country, very likely with the aid of foreign troops, perhaps UN Blue Helmets, that the government will then come in and take all guns away from all American citizens. Those who resist will be thrown into concentration camps that either are now being built or already have been built by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and ultimately the United States will be forced into some kind of one-world socialistic government, what's often called the New World Order. Right. That's really what ties these groups together, and our listings of these groups are based strictly on ideology. It's not a matter of criminality or violence or some kind of assessment along those lines.
All right, so it is okay. That's a good point, because Michael, I want to ask you: the 1,007 active hate groups in the United States in 2012, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Majority of the groups are in California. There are 82 of them there. Texas has 62. Florida has 59. Georgia has 53, and New Jersey has 51. You say, Mark says this is ideology, not necessarily violence. You don't agree with that?
Well, I just don't think you should criminalize dissent. There are a lot of crazy people in the country. I get callers who believe all those things on my radio show that Mark has talked about. We, in fact, do once a month, we do Conspiracy Day whenever it's a full moon and all the conspiracists can call in. Now, some of these people have very strange ideas, but to say that this is some kind of rising tide of danger and to cite 1,000 groups, I mean, talking about some of the groups that he cites, it's really problematic to me because, for instance, one of the things in the press release from the Southern Poverty Law Center was that a lot of this was because we have a black president. One of the groups they list on their map of hate is the Nation of Islam. Now, I'm not a Louis Farrakhan fan by any means, but I don't think the Nation of Islam has been associated with some kind of upsurge in violence, and I don't think it's racist against a black president. I also don't think it was fair at all that Mark included as a hate group in his designation the Family Research Council. And that, by the way, actually led to an incident of violence where someone came in and shot a guard at the Family Research Council in Washington.
Mark, he did say,
and this is a mainstream conservative group.
And he did say that he saw the name on your website. Let me hold on to that point for a second. We'll bring John in here. John, square the circle for me between what you describe, what you've written about as wingnuts and violence.
Well, Ali, look, I think, first of all, what's important to realize is this is not debating classifications. This is not about criminalizing dissent. What's important about the work of the SPLC, I think, is tracking a trend which is unmistakable. When you're talking about an 800% growth in the number of self-described patriot groups or hatred groups over the presidency of Barack Obama, something is going on. And to deny it is a bit of willful blindness, in my opinion. We've seen the rise in rhetoric, steady rhetoric, about this sort of communist conspiracy to undo the Constitution, the imposition of militia, martial law. Very often it's simply a racket.
So what?
So what? The rhetoric has retreated, John.
No.
John, there was more emphasis on the birther thing.
Hold on. Listen, please, let me finish, because this is important. Actually, the SPLC says that the number of nativist, anti-immigrant groups in the country has declined. And I think that does speak in part to an improving economy. But what should concern us all is the ratcheting up of rhetoric and the safe harbor that some of these groups give folks, and the way that this has really become a racket that proliferates on the far reaches of hyperpartisan media. And to deny that hate, to ignore its influence in our civic discourse, that is willful denial.
Mark, let me ask you to Michael's point about the fact that he associates the conservative Christian organization, Family Research Council, that you've associated it as a hate group, and that may have led to a crime. Nice. What's your response to that?
Well, first let me say that it is really not true that we are trying to criminalize dissent. I think we fully recognize that the vast majority of people involved in these groups, especially the so-called patriot groups, are not going to blow up a federal building, are not going to shoot anyone, are not, in fact, going to engage in any crime. But as John suggests, I mean, to say that a lot of violence doesn't come from this milieu, I think is just willfully blind. We know from looking back at the 1990s, when the first wave of the militia movement occurred, as well as during the last 4 years when we've seen such enormous growth in these groups, that in fact there is a lot of terrorism or attempted terrorism or other kinds of political violence that the milieu produces. With regard to the Family Research Council, we list that group unlike what it says, because they regularly propagate known falsehoods.
Got it. All right.
Tony Perkins, the leader of the Family Research Council, has repeatedly and falsely said on national television and elsewhere that we list their group because they oppose homosexuality. They believe homosexuality is a sin, and because they oppose same-sex marriage. And as Perkins knows, that is not true. We criticize them and have listed them as a hate group since 2010 because they put out information like the absolutely false claim that gay men molest children at vastly higher rates than straight men.
Mark, we're going to end it on that note.
The FRC is depicting gay people as incestuous, evil, perverted, a danger to our nation, and so on. And we think that we are fully within our rights to call them what they are, a hate group. Certainly we are not in favor of any violence, the violence that occurred at FRC.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Potok is the author of the report. It's worth looking at that report, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Michael Medved, as you know, is a conservative commentator for Salem Radio. John Avlon is a CNN contributor and an author of a book worth reading, Wingnuts, How the Lunatic Fringe is Hijacking America. Still to come.
How the lunatic fringe is hijacking America. These crazy Christian patriot constitutionalists. I mean, you know, these people really do need to be watched, because standing up for freedom and liberty for all people is a dangerous idea when you live in a totalitarian country.
Isn't it interesting how this is playing? Whoops. There we go. Isn't this interesting how this is playing out, how we're seeing this play out? We're seeing a push by the feds, or by this regime, by the elites, if you will, and we're seeing a push back by the patriot groups who are just merely saying this is wrong, what you're doing is wrong, and by saying so, and by pointing out things like their agenda, by pointing out things like the erosion of rights, then we, and I would include us in this, we are now labeled the lunatic fringe, or not now being labeled. I mean, we've always been labeled this lunatic fringe, but the rhetoric is getting stronger and more incisive and more critical now. Now we're seeing this building to a crescendo. And folks, do not take this lightly, because there will be, I can guarantee you, and this is what I wrote about my DHS Insider series, this regime wants chaos. Of course, they thrive on chaos. Who in the world do you think is in office but radicals who cut their teeth on chaos? Rules for Radicals, the Alinsky book dedicated to Lucifer. Now, how in the world anyone, any American, any Christian, any sane person, sane thinking person could possibly endorse back or even follow a book dedicated to Lucifer is beyond me. But we've got this twisted sense of anybody who questions authority, when it was patriotic to do it under Bush, and yes, I'm using now the right-left paradigm, but when it was actually patriotic to do it against the conservative element, now it is a threat to our national security. This is how the people are able to reconcile this contradiction, because that's exactly what it is. We are also seeing this, well, on a macro level across the globe, because look at what's happening in Cyprus. Look at what's happening in Greece and all the smaller countries within the Eurozone, Greece especially. Look at what's taking place there, the rioting. Who are they rioting against? Well, they're rioting against the cabal of bankers. Well, when you talk about the cabal of bankers, you've got to talk about the people behind it. I mean, the banks are just buildings. Well, who's behind these buildings? Well, if you want to get right down to it, it's a small number of families connected to British royalty, or having some connection to British royalty, if you will. This is part of the conspiracy by definition, it's a conspiracy. But you talk about this, you're a lunatic, you're a nut job, I think, what is a wing nut? And all of this because people don't have the time or desire or even the ability, perhaps that might be it, to really get into the depths of the lie. And the lie is what we are living right now. The lie is what you see around you. The lie is the appearance of normalcy. This is the problem. Once we can crack that nut open and show people that what we're seeing right now is part of a much larger plan, then I think we will have a better chance in showing that this is not a wingnut situation. There are no wingnuts when we talk about this. There is a clear and a very clear path of evidence that leads from hundreds of years ago, if you will, to today. We're dealing with an element, a very evil, demonic, Luciferian element behind all of this. So the fight, and that's why when Steve Quayle comes on, he talks about the spiritual aspect of this. We talk about the spiritual aspect of this because there is a level of spiritual influence, a big level of spiritual influence. As above, so it is below. And so we are fighting a demonic element here. The gloves are off. The fight has dramatically changed over the last 4.5, 5 years now. Now we are actually in we've gone from a boxing match into a street fighting match. You know how they have those street, or what do they call those things, Joe? You know, and they just, no rules, if you will. They just fight. Well, that's what we're seeing right now. But the groundwork, as I mentioned earlier, and we're going to get into, we do have something developing right now that Joe's taking care of. But as this, in order to understand, and this is what really I had a hard time with. I really had a hard time with this when I talked to Steve. I mean, back 10 years ago, he was so far ahead of me on this. And when I talked to other people, they're so far ahead of me on this conspiracy that it was so hard for me to understand going into it cold. And of course, a lot of people, they didn't have time to sit down and say, look, this is how it's been structured. A lot of this I had to find out on my own, and I'm glad I did, because I've got to tell you, I'll check, recheck, verify, and find other verification, authentication of evidence, or of bits of evidence that I find, documentation that I find. So seeing this, working this through myself, and with Joe, both of us doing this together, we can see now where the groundwork has been laid, and not only the groundwork being laid over the decades and even centuries, but the acceleration of where we're at and who's pushing the buttons, who is pushing the pedal to the floor, who is driving this vehicle now much faster toward that abyss, toward the edge of the cliff. Why do we need to know this? Because we need to know who we are fighting, so we can actually put up a substantial fight, because we are instructed, I believe, as Christians, at least this is my view, as Christians, it is our job to put up a fight, even though we know how the story ends. It doesn't mean we can lay down and pull the covers over our heads and say, well, and we know how the story ends. No, it's our job. Do we not, as Christians, have the responsibility to cause the enemy as much grief as possible, to be the fly in the ointment, to be the monkey wrench in the gears? I believe we do, and that's our position. That's our job, as not only as Americans in the spirit of America, but as Christians. That's what I believe, and I think that in order to really fully understand, and these programs too, especially as we continue, knowing or believing in our hearts that we have perhaps a finite number of programs left. And I say that not to be dramatic, but to be realistic. Well, we'll find other ways to communicate. We're not going to abandon the fight. We're going to, in fact, fight harder and smarter and adapt, I suppose. But we have to be realistic. What if, what if we knew that a week from now or 2 weeks from now, our show would not exist anymore, or we wouldn't be able to talk? Well, we'd have to, that's how we are. That's how we are handling this now. All right, folks, let me tell you this. We received an email before the show from a listener in Singapore. And this was a rather urgent plea to get on to talk on this on our show. Joe, maybe you can explain this further.
This lady is under persecution, and she's on with us. Ma'am, can you go ahead and say what you need to say?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You're on with
Hello?
the Hagmann and Hagmann. Yes, you're on with the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Go ahead, caller from Singapore. Go ahead.
Okay, things have been happening to me since year 2007. People invade my house to violate me, chloroform gas me, put me on pornography website, black magic me on my body, and I have suffered since 2007, and I feel that I really cannot hold on anymore, so I have to say my piece. I just want to say that Christians have been affected because they don't know they're being affected. You can listen to YouTube videos because the YouTube video has been tainted by negative arguments. You can go to a total recorder, the software, download it, and then record the YouTube video of the Christian songs, and then after that, stop the YouTube video, and then you listen to a total recorder. You can then you can hear the arguments that people put in, because in your show, you say that, there are some people, there's one show I was listening to, and you say that someone in Canada was acting very strangely while he was in the shopping mall, but I want to say that it's like people are being affected subliminally, like in their subconscious mind, unconscious mind. Because like when you go to church, you see that people are there are two range of people that are in church. One is like, they are truly close to God. The other one is when they go to church, there's other motive for going to church. So the other thing is, when I was listening to your show in December, I called Henry Groover. And Henry Groover was saying that, there's a person trying to reach me in December, and someone was calling me. I called his office, and after the show, I called again, and Henry Groover was saying that I need to get back to my place because he's the office. And I called him the next day, and he was telling me things about blood, which is not very Christian, and because the people oppressing me is monitoring my computer and my mobile phone. So they actually called Henry Groover and tell him things, and Henry Groover tell me that, if a Muslim kill a Christian, it's not a sin to them, because to them it's all right. So, this is the part that Henry Groover passed the message to me. You can ask Henry Groover about it. I just want to say that...
Caller, hold on 1 second. I just want to just tell listeners, and also I'm a little bit concerned because when you were coming on here, and Joe and I, Joe just told me this, you had conveyed to Joe, you had said to Joe, treat these as my last words. What do you mean by that, caller?
Well, the thing is, when they come into the house to violate me, they also black magic my physical body. So my life force energy is draining away, and I really don't know what to do because there's no one who wants to help me. So if they didn't kill me through black magic, they might kill me some other way. So I really don't know.
Well, ma'am, I want you to not lose hope. We're going to ask our listeners to pray for you.
I would say that please don't pray for me. I understand that you want to pray for me because as Christians should pray for each other. But, the black magic on me is really strong, and I don't want any more people to die, and there are people who died praying for me. I really hope that all of you are all right. So I just want to say that please don't pray for me.
Okay, well, caller, first of all, what's your first name?
Ophelia.
Ophelia, okay. Ophelia, who is doing this to you?
The government.
Okay, the government in the country in which you live.
Yes.
And this is for your religious beliefs.
Yes.
Okay, and exactly, Ophelia, what are they doing to you precisely?
The usual thing I've always said. They come into the house, they violate me, they put me on pornography website, they chloroform gas me. So, when I come to the house, I don't know about it because they chloroform gas me. And they violate me, and then they put me on the pornography website, they black magic my physical body. They bribe my parents, they bribe my sister. So I'm being observed every moment I go. When I go out, they send messages throughout the places I go, like, I'm a terrorist or something. Telling people about me, telling them to watch out for me, to laugh at me and things like that. So I can't even go out. I'm incarcerated in my own house for more than 4 months. I mean, I've been incarcerated all these years, so I never went out of my house. I can't even find a job. The last time I managed to find a job, I managed to move out of the house. And these people bring me back to the Institute of Mental Health. And when I was in the Institute of Mental Health, they give me injections, they give me medicine to make me sleep, and they let people coming to violate me. And the doctor and nurses just keep me, have also been bribed to let this happen to me. And I'm very angry because there's no justice done for me in this country. And I'm not the only girl that's been happening to me, and I won't be the last, that's one to say. But I'm the girl who lasted the long time because other girl has become their sex slave. And me, I still haven't. It's been years 2007 until now, and they find it. How come I haven't give in? If I don't give in, they might kill me. So I'm just saying, I'm still hanging on. That's what I want to say. But yesterday, I was listening in, and I could feel all of you that, like all of you are suffocated because I listen to Steve Krill, and I understand his meaning, and I forgive. That's what I say. I'm a Christian, and I forgive.
But Ophelia, why are they selecting you? Or you said it's not just you. How prolific is this? Exactly how?
From what I know, I know that I'm not the only first girl because I'm not the only first girl, and I know that I won't be the last. That's what I want to say. That's all I can say.
What did you do specifically to appear on their radar, so to speak? Were you outspoken in your beliefs? What precipitated this activity?
Oh, okay. If you really want to know, I just want to say that they knew that I'm from pure source, and they just want to make sure that, I don't know if you believe me, Mr. Hagmann, but, some believe, some don't believe, but this group of people believe me. Because I was a seraphim, I was an angel from heaven, and I'm here to make sure that whatever is happening in Singapore can be known to the world. Because when God sent me here, God knows that I'm not the only girl that's suffering like this. So they're taking my right energy away. These people believe who I was because they asked psychics about my past life. And I didn't tell these people about my past life. And psychics keep telling them that who I was. And they want to take my right energy. That's what I want to say.
Okay.
All right, Ophelia. I hope you get that strength and keep going as long as you can and continue to spread the gospel to as many people as you can.
You are a Christian, I take it. Is that right, Ophelia?
Yes.
Okay. And you're an outspoken believer in Jesus Christ, and you've been saved?
Oh, of course I'm safe. They black magic me to the point that other people would have died. If not for God, do you think I would have survived so long?
No. I just wanted to make sure, Ophelia. I just wanted to verify this. That's all. Please don't take my questions as antagonistic. It's more of
No, I'm so sorry. It's just that, I'm under so much oppression, so my language is a little bit harsh. But I just want to say that I'm surviving. I am, it's not thriving, it's just surviving. My father don't give me any money because I depend on my father. I can't go to work. And they black magic me every time they come into the house. And I feel that I'm not feeling well, but it's not medical, and I can't go to a doctor because it's not medical issues. So I'm just saying I'm surviving. If not for God, I won't be surviving until so long. And because of God, I've survived for so long. And I'm grateful to God, and that's what I want to say.
Well, thanks, Ophelia.
Okay.
I hope you can keep in touch with us. We're going to have to let you go. God bless you.
Okay.
And, stay in touch and let us know you're still surviving, okay?
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
God bless
Thank
you.
you.
And ladies and gentlemen, we had just received a message as we were starting the show that she needed to convey a message, and that was that she's being persecuted and abused. And it was hard to understand. She talked kind of fast there for a little bit, but
Right.
she conveyed to me in chat that this could be, treat these as if they're my last words.
And anyone who would say that, obviously, so we went out of sync and brought her on to explain the backstory of that. We had no idea what was going on, so we had to find out. And I think that she made her point clear. And she's from Singapore. She's a Christian, and she's under persecution, according to her, by the people in the Singapore government or agents thereof. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is the 20th day of March 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, Joe Hagmann. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to get back right into additional information that you need to know about. Break down what's happening in the world today. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies that work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations that work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this second hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It's a live broadcast, the 20th day of March 2013. With me in studio is Joe Hagmann. I'm Doug Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com, and our sister station to the north, CanadaFreePress.com. You know, at the beginning of the program, the opening of the program, we were talking about this massive relocation reality. My sound is bad? Our sound is bad. Well, thanks for letting me know. Let me, if you want to redo that, and I'll redo it after you, and then we'll just...
Here's what we'll do. We'll go to audio.
All right. We'll do an audio clip?
We'll do an audio, and we're going to try to fix this, whatever's wrong with the sound.
All right.
This is the strangest secret in the world.
This is Earl Nightingale. I'd like to tell you about the strangest secret in the world. Some years ago, Albert Schweitzer, the great doctor and Nobel Prize winner, was being interviewed in London, and a reporter asked him, "Doctor, what's wrong with men today?" The great doctor was silent for a moment, and then he said, "Men don't think." And it's about this that I want to talk with you. We live today in a golden age. This is an era that man has looked forward to, dreamed of, and worked toward for thousands of years. But since it's here, we pretty well take it for granted. Ours is a land of abundant opportunity for everyone. But you know what happens? Let's take 100 men who all start even at the age of 25. If you asked any one of them if he wanted to be a success, he'd tell you that he did. And you'd notice that he was eager toward life. There was a certain sparkle to his eye, an erectness to his carriage, and life seemed like a pretty interesting adventure to him. But by the time these 100 men reach the age of 65, only 5 would have made the grade. Only 5 are successful. When we say only 5% achieve success, we have to define success, and here's the definition. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. If a man is working toward a predetermined goal and knows where he's going, that man is a success. If he's not doing that, he's a failure. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Rollo May, the distinguished psychiatrist, wrote a wonderful book called Man's Search for Himself. And in this book, he says, the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice. It's conformity. A survey was made one time that covered a lot of men, working men. And these men were asked, why do you work? Why do you get up in the morning? 19 out of 20 had no idea. They simply said, everyone goes to work in the morning. And that's the reason they do it, because everyone else is doing it. And there you have the trouble today. It's conformity. People acting like everyone else without knowing why, without knowing where they're going. Now, we learn to read by the time we're 7. We learn to make a living by the time we're 25. Usually, by that time, we're not only earning a living, we're supporting a family. And yet, by the time they're 65, the great majority hasn't learned how to become financially independent in the richest land that has ever been known. Why? They conform. They're acting like the wrong percentage group, the 95% who don't succeed. Why do these people conform? Well, let's get back to our definition of success. Who succeeds? The only man who succeeds is the man who is progressively realizing a worthy ideal. He's the man who says, I'm going to become this, and then begins to work toward that goal. He succeeds because he knows where he's going. Think of a ship leaving a harbor, and think of it with a complete voyage all mapped out and planned. The captain and crew know exactly where the ship is going and how long it will take. It has a definite goal, and it will reach that goal. Now let's take another ship, just like the first, only let's not put a crew on it, or a captain at the helm. Let's give it no aiming point, no goal, no destination. We just start the engines and let it go. I think you'll agree with me that if it gets out of the harbor at all, it will wind up on some deserted beach, a derelict. It can't go anyplace because it has no destination and no guidance. And it's the same with a human being. I'll tell you who the successful people are. A success is the school teacher who's teaching school because that's what he or she wanted to do. The success is the woman who's a wife and mother because she wanted to become a wife and mother and is doing a great job of it. The success is the man who runs the corner gas station because that's what he wants to do. The success is the successful salesman who wants to become a top-notch salesman and grow and build with his organization. A success is anyone who is doing deliberately a predetermined job because that's what he decided to do deliberately. But only 1 out of 20 does that. That's why today there really isn't any competition unless we make it for ourselves. Instead of competing, all we have to do is create. For 20 years, I looked for the key.
All right, that was Earl Nightingale, shortened. That was rather abbreviated.
Well, there is such a key.
Oh, here we go.
And I've found it. Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about. Throughout all history, the great wise men and teachers, philosophers and prophets have disagreed with one another on many different things. It's only on this one point that they're in complete and unanimous agreement. Buddha said, all we are is what we've thought about. Marcus Aurelius said, a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. Disraeli said, everything comes if a man will only wait. I've brought myself by long meditation to the conviction that a human being with a settled purpose must accomplish it, and that nothing can resist a will that will stake even existence for its fulfillment. Ralph Waldo Emerson said this, a man is what he thinks about all day long. William James said, the greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. And George Bernard Shaw said, people are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them. Well, it's pretty apparent, isn't it? We become what we think about. It stands to reason that a person who's thinking about a definite and worthwhile goal is going to reach it, because that's what he's thinking about, and we become what we think about. Conversely, the man who has no goal, who doesn't know where he's going, and whose thoughts must therefore be thoughts of confusion and anxiety and fear and worry, becomes what he thinks about. His life becomes one of frustration, fear, anxiety, and worry. And if he thinks about nothing, he becomes nothing. You see, the human mind is the last great unexplored continent on Earth. It contains riches beyond our wildest dreams. It will return anything we plant in it. Now, you might say, but if that's true, why don't people use their minds more? Why don't they till their fertile mental soil? We have the answer to that, too. Our mind comes as standard equipment at birth. It's free, and things that are given to us for nothing we place little value upon. Things that we pay money for, we value. The paradox is that exactly the reverse is true. Everything that's really worthwhile in life came to us free. Our minds, our souls, our bodies, our hopes, our dreams, our ambitions, our intelligence, our love of our families and children and friends. All these priceless possessions are free. But the things that cost us money are actually very cheap and can be replaced at any time. A good man can be completely wiped out and make another fortune. He can do that several times. Even if our homes burn down, we can rebuild them. But the things we got for nothing, the really valuable possessions, we can never replace. The human mind isn't used merely because we take it for granted. It can do any kind of a job we assign to it, but generally speaking, we use it for little jobs instead of big, important ones. Universities tell us that most of us are operating on about 10% of our abilities. Decide now. What is it you want? Plant your goal in your mind. Give yourself direction and a destination. It's the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. You see, the very law that gives us success is a two-edged sword. We must control our thinking. The same rule that can lead a man to a life of success, wealth, happiness, and all the things he's dreamed of for himself and his family, that very same law can lead him into the gutter. It's all in how he uses it, for good or bad. This is the strangest secret in the world. Remember these words from the Sermon on the Mount, and remember them well. Keep them constantly before you. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. It's as marvelous and as simple as that. In fact, it's so simple that in our seemingly complicated world, it's difficult for an adult to understand that all he needs is a purpose and faith. Above all, don't worry. Worry brings fear, and fear is crippling. The only thing that can cause you to worry is trying to do it all yourself. Know that all you have to do is hold your goal before you. Everything else will take care of itself. Remember also to keep calm and cheerful. Don't let petty things annoy you and get you off course. Prosperity is founded upon the law of mutual exchange. Any person who contributes to prosperity must prosper in turn himself. Sometimes the return will not come from those you serve, but it must come to you from someplace, for that's the law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. There are no exceptions to a law. You can drive down any street in America, and from your car estimate the service that's being rendered by the people living on that street. Have you ever thought of this yardstick before? It's interesting. Once this law is fully understood, any thinking person can tell his own fortune. If he wants more, he must be of more service to those from whom he receives his return. If he wants less, he has only to reduce this service. This is the price you must pay for what you want. If you believe you can enrich yourself by deluding others, you can end only by deluding yourself. It may take some time, but just as surely as you breathe, you will get back what you put out. The prisons and the streets where the lonely walk are filled with people who tried to make new laws just for themselves. We may sometimes avoid the laws of men, but there are greater laws that can't be broken. One time I heard Grove Patterson, the editor-in-chief of the Toledo Daily Blade, make a speech. And as he concluded his speech, he said something that I've never forgotten. He said, "My years in the newspaper business have convinced me of several things. Among them, that people are basically good, and that we came from someplace and we're going someplace. So we should make our time here an exciting adventure. The architect of the universe didn't build a stairway leading nowhere." And the greatest teacher of all, the carpenter from the plains of Galilee, gave us the secret time and time again. As ye believe, so shall it be done unto you.
I'm glad we were able to get that whole clip in, folks. That was Earl Nightingale, and that is called The Strangest Secret. That was done in 1956. It was the first spoken word record that sold over 1 million copies. It achieved gold record status, the very first to do that. And a little bit about Mr. Nightingale, to tell you, you might have heard the words, but understand the person speaking the words. He was, at 17, he joined the Marines. And where did he find himself? Aboard the USS Arizona. When? On the very day of the attack on Pearl Harbor. He was one of a dozen surviving Marines on board that day. After that, he found him and his mother ended up in a tent city, kind of like a shanty town, after his father had left him. He was born in 1921, died in 1989 at the age of 68.
Yeah, that was a very powerful audio that I found yesterday and uploaded for today's show, because it speaks to what we talk about, the power of the mind. We talk about the authority we have in the Lord. Well, and the Earl Nightingale went on to say, "You are what you think. You become what you think. You become what you think about all the time." Well, what do you guys think about all the time? I know what's in my mind and what I think about a lot. I know what my goals are, and they're becoming more spiritual as I grow. And as long as we keep positive and keep our thinking correct, then it can lead to good things. But the point is that what you think and how you think greatly affects your life.
Exactly. And I think people, if you listen to that carefully and re-listen to it or look it up on YouTube, that kind of tells it all and puts things in perspective. And whether it be from a personal vantage point or a macro point of view. As we talk about things, the news, analysis, we're talking to people. We're talking, and we're people, obviously. We are human beings made in the image of God. And I'll tell you what, we were born for this day, this time, for these challenges that we all face. And I think that we have to realize that God gives us these tasks because, well, we are appointed to do these tasks. And if you listen to what Mr. Nightingale narrated there, he sums it up very nicely. This is what, we have to, and we are what we think about. And if we wimp out, then we have to be answerable to God for wimping out. So we can't wimp out. We should not wimp out. We must in the image and under the authority of God live to fight the battles, to fight the evil that is so pervasive in this world, to do what we are appointed to do. We all have those tasks. And that brings me back, circles right back around to the beginning of the program, where I mentioned, and Joe will give me a little bit of time here to talk about this, what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing right now, and I think if people look very clearly at what happened with the resignation of Benedict XVI and the with the new Pope Francis I coming in as the 266th Pope, the pontiff for the Roman Catholic Church. If you look at the hierarchy, and this is, we're not talking about Catholics, we're not talking about the faith, we're talking about a political portion of the system. Please understand that distinction. It's extremely important. We're not talking about the faith, we're talking about the politics and the hierarchy. But if you look at what's taking place right now and how all of this ties together, you've got Time magazine with the headline, New World Pope. You've got this New World Order that we consistently talk about. Well, exactly what's taking place here. For the first time in history, we are seeing the duality of Satan play out right now. We are seeing, and please understand the words that I say, the duality of Satan. What are we seeing? We have two black popes and two white popes in existence right now. And you might think, well, what are you talking about? Well, there's only one pope.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right. And it's kind of funny because in the show preparation, we were talking about this, and it took me a while to really wrap my head around this. But if you look at the hierarchy of the Vatican, well, you've got the Vatican, the white popes, which would be the Vatican as you and I, and I'm taking some liberties here. So those who understand the depth of this topic, please understand I'm taking some liberties, so don't take me to task for the liberties I take. I'm just kind of simplifying this. Today, for the first time in the history of the world, we have two white popes in the form of Francis I, as well as the Pope Emeritus, Benedict XVI. Benedict XVI is still on the Vatican grounds, although has abdicated from the papacy, still is a Pope Emeritus. Then you've got Francis I now taking the duties of the Vatican. You've got the black popes, the superior general of the Society of Jesus. That's the official title of the leader of the Jesuits. The Jesuits are known, and I understand the pejorative nature of the term a black pope, meaning are associated with the Jesuits, but the Jesuits are known as the Black Order because of the garments that they wear, the black garments, as opposed to the white cape of the Pope. You've got the Jesuits, the black garment. Now, the Jesuits are headed right now by a man named Adolfo Nicolas. He had taken over as head of the Jesuits, the 35th General Congregation of the Society of Jesus, that was convened on January 5th, 2008 in Rome. He took over for a gentleman named, by the name of Peter Hans Kolvenbach. Kolvenbach retired. Actually, he had submitted his resignation or retirement, asked to retire at the age of 80. He wanted to step down in 2008. So he appealed to Pope Benedict XVI 2 years before his 80th birthday in 2006. Peter Hans Kolvenbach is alive and well, and pretty much the equivalent of Benedict XVI from the Jesuit order. So if you compare Kolvenbach to Benedict XVI, you will have Adolfo Nicholas as comparative to Francis I. So from the Jesuit side of things, you've got 2 black popes, and from the Vatican side, you've got 2 white popes. And this is the first time in history this has ever happened. Well, what am I talking about? Well, and what about the Jesuits? Who are they? Am I demonizing an order of Christianity? No. The Jesuit order, it's a around a 500-year-old entity. They are known now, just as a matter of information. They're known for covert operations, geopolitical planning. It's a male-only organization, and they are structured at the highest levels as a secret military operation within, shall we say, like a shadow Vatican, if you will. Much like a shadow government, a shadow Vatican. They're officially known, by the way, as the Society of Jesus. And they were originally used by the Vatican to counter the various Reformation movements in Europe. Now, that's the history.
Yeah.
Okay? Just so you know this. Go ahead.
And the name is deceiving because they take their oath to the Pope. They don't. I mean, I guess aside from what they are personally believing, as a Jesuit, you have allegiance to the Pope, to the Church, like the Secret Service does the President.
Right. Now, there is a lot of controversy, and I will admit this flat out. There's a lot of controversy over the Jesuit oath. That, in spite of and regardless of that controversy, just set that aside. Forget about this for the time being. Okay, we're not going to go down that road because it would be counterproductive at this point, because we're not looking at that. We're looking at something different. The Jesuit organization, since 1814, in complete control of the Vatican institution, the hierarchy, certain hierarchy of the Vatican. They also control, for example, the military order of Malta. All right, other organizations include, but are not limited to, various central banks, big corporations, certain secret services, the European Commission, various organs of the United Nations, numerous societies, including, one could, and there's evidence for this, Freemasonry. So there is a level of infiltration into Freemasonry, the Brotherhood as it's known. Now, it's important to note that the Vatican, and one can argue this, now this, you have to look at the bigger picture here and not get tied up with a lot of the minutia. Look at the bigger picture and then kind of take a few steps back, look at what the picture is showing you, and then we can look at the detail of the picture. But what's important here is the Jesuit-controlled Vatican, and there is a level of control, one will argue, and argue effectively. Since 1929, has actually controlled Vatican City. Now, the Jesuit order, the Catholic clergy, and the military order of Malta, and many other of the papal and royal military orders have a very colorful, well, a very colorful past, but also a very patriarchal culture. There's a rigid social and political structure. Understanding that Jesuits have no women, there are no women allowed, and so on. The estimation about the membership of the order, there's about 20,000 members. Of the about 14,000 priest members, some have taken a other specific oath that would be, as you mentioned, Joe, to a different entity, if you will, that being the papacy itself or the Vatican or the Pope himself. All right. But what's really important to understand, the association with the Military Order of Malta, which has about 12,000, 13,000 members outside of the volunteers. The Vatican / Jesuit / Masonic aspect of things has a certain dominance in the world doctrine, the world geopolitical affairs. So why did I even bring this up, and why am I even talking about this? Well, when you look at so stand back again. You're seeing, for example, the abdication by Benedict XVI. Unprecedented. Well, no, I shouldn't say unprecedented. A rare occasion. Hasn't happened in the last 600 years. You're seeing at this point two popes, the Pope Emeritus and, of course, Pope Francis. Then you have the Jesuit part of this, the Black Pope. You've got the two individuals I mentioned before. Okay, you've got the Adolfo Nicholas as the current head of the Jesuits, replacing the I could say replacing Peter Hans Kalvenbach, who abdicated as well. So you've got this black and white duality within the Vatican, the hierarchy of the Vatican, which also has its tentacles into the Masonic aspects of things. Now, again, I don't want to get too far out and too mired in details, but when you look at this and you look at what's taking place with respect to the run-up to the New World Order, this Vatican / Jesuit duality will play an important role in the taking the system, the current system we have of 196 countries, turning that into a system made up of 10 regions. 10 regions with one central bank. Why? Well, how much money does the Vatican control? How much influence does the Vatican control? Have quite a bit. The Vatican Jesuit Masonic Network operates out of Vatican City, Rome. However, they also operate from the city of London, the economic center of London, which actually has been its own sovereign state since 1649 and is actually owned by the City of London Corporation. But perhaps more important to the people of the United States, they have a presence and a controlling factor and influence over Washington, D.C. in the United States and the United States military. But by the way, the District of Columbia Act of 1871 turned D.C. into a municipal corporation. Congress has the supreme authority over the city and the federal district with its own special constitutional amendment since 1961. But that aside, there are, Washington, D.C., I had learned, and folks, you might want to look this up as well. Did you know, Joe, and let me ask you this question, because we didn't talk about this before the show. Did you know what Washington, D.C.'s original name was before it was Washington, D.C.?
Francis.
No. Good guess, though. It was Rome, Maryland. And by the way, a branch of the Potomac River was called Tiber Creek, which is named after the Tiber River in Rome. So you've got this duality in Rome with Washington, D.C. And guess what? Washington, D.C. has 7 hills, as does Rome. Capitol Hill, Meridian Hill, Floral Hill, Forest Hills, Hillbrook, Hillcrest, and Knox Hill.
And some Catholic Bibles even label themselves as the harlot. And then it says in the Cliff Notes of the Bible, interpretation not to be taken literally.
Exactly. So where am I going with all this? Well, the end game scenario here, and this is the best research. And by the way, this is a work in progress for me, but I would suspect that Nathan Leal and Doc Marquis and a lot of these others people who are really following the Illuminati would have a much greater understanding and perhaps even be better at explaining this. But what I found with my research is this. The Vatican, the hierarchy of the Vatican, not the people of faith, but the hierarchy of the Vatican Bank, is an influence in the implementation of a new world order. Now, remember, folks, remember this, and let me kind of quiz you a little bit. When Francis I walked out on that balcony, and think back to other popes when they walked out on the balcony. Were they alone? Did they have people next to them? Generally, no. They had people behind them. When Francis I walked out on 3/13/13, who was standing next to him? You'll know him as the Archbishop of essentially Latin America, Brazil. His name is Adilio Schurer. Adilio Schurer. Now, he is the man who essentially has run the Catholic Church and the implementation of the rules and influence of the Vatican from Vatican City in Latin America, in South America. All of South America, all of Latin America. That's that man. For him to stand next to Francis I is symbolic. Well, why is that? Because part of the New World Order, and I'm trying to really explain this so when I'm listening to myself, I'd understand it, and hopefully you will too. It's my understanding, my belief, based on my professional analysis of all of the evidence. What we are witnessing here is, and what we're about to witness, is the greatest reallocation of wealth since time began. That is the reallocation of wealth to the very area of the world where Odilo Schurer is from, South America, Latin America. Why? Because this is to further or in furtherance of the 10 economic regions that will make up the New World Order. To take the 196 countries, water it down into 10 regions. And those 10 regions will have leaders answering to one other leader, one steward, or one king, if you will, over those 10 economic regions. So you've got the 10 regions. And where have we heard this before? In the Bible, haven't we? Isn't this what Nebuchadnezzar, the dream of Nebuchadnezzar? Could we not perhaps make a comparison to that? I mean, I don't know. That's just on Joe. I'll ask you. The 10 economic regions. Well, this is part of the New World Order. And by the way, when I say the reallocation of wealth, it is to increase the wealth of the southern hemisphere of the Americas. And you recall I mentioned GATT and NAFTA earlier. What were GATT and NAFTA all about? Well, if you look at what GATT and NAFTA were all about, GATT was an international agreement to reduce the trade barriers among member countries. It was a code of conduct. It was a contract. Go ahead.
Will I be able to get your attention on something that I've been trying to get you to look at for a while about the Organization of the American States?
I guess you will. I guess. See, this, what you're witnessing, folks, is how I guess we all mature or come to this realization at different times. So don't blame, for example, don't be too hard on a family member who's not up.
Oh no,
no. I'm just saying to others. When a family member is not doesn't reach that specific realization as quickly as you do, I certainly can understand that because I'm a living example of that. And Joe's been smacking me over the head with this piece of paper, several pieces of paper for the last month and a half, I think. And he's been saying, look at this, look at this, look at this. It's important. You have to understand this. And I said, yeah. But you know what? The organization, what you're talking about, are the Organization of American States, right? Or is it something different? Okay.
The Organization of American States, correct.
Okay. So, but here's the bottom line, and here's why I mentioned all of this, because GATT and NAFTA were both instruments to really grease the skids for this particular new world order, this one world government, and the formation of these 10 trade regions, these 10 economic zones. Why is this important? Because if we know the plan and know the players, we will better understand what's going on. We will better be able to better fight what's going on. We'll be able to better kind of, it'd be like somebody letting the air out of the bad guy's tires. So they're going to have to stop and repump the tires before they can continue. That helps if we know what vehicle they're driving. So this is what we need to do. We need to be able to identify these people and identify their long-range goals and plans. But we're seeing these plans speed up, so we're running out of time. So yes, this new international economic order will be based on equity, sovereign equality, interdependence, common interest, and cooperation among all states, irrespective of their economic and social systems. The Vatican is here to tell you that it's socialism. The hierarchy of the Vatican is here to tell you that socialism is the answer, that economic equality is the answer. We must correct the inequalities and redress existing injustices to make it possible to eliminate the widening gap between the developed countries like America and the developing countries like Brazil, like other countries in South America and Latin America. And how do we do that? Well, one of the ways is to schedule the next Olympics for Brazil. Did that just happen? Oh, and by the way, the buildup of China, if you recall, folks, when did China really become a true economic power? It was back in 2008, about. If you follow and I won't get into the mechanics of that, but what happened in 2008? We had two things happen. We had one heck of a orchestrated collapse of our own economic system. But China, by the way, hosted the Olympics in 2008. And you might think, well, so what? That was one of the most expensive hosting of any Olympic ceremonies ever. But And is that significant? Of course, it's significant. It's that buildup of China. It's the Olympic, almost the gracing of the Olympic, kind of like a anointing of China with the Olympics. But what we're witnessing right now is the greatest and most significant movement toward the completion of a one world order. The last 5 years has seen the implementation of this with the Arab Spring, with the papacy changing hands. All of this together is going to result in a new structuring, a new world order. And you see, when you look at the details, and I know perhaps I wasn't totally clear in this, but when you start looking at all the players and start understanding all of the organizations that have been existing for years, why did they exist? You look at the Masonic rites, well, Masons, and 98% of the Masons out there have no clue of what the other 2% or 1% is doing. No clue. It's the same with other organizations. But when you start plugging in names and identifying the organizations and matching them to the agenda and then looking at what's taking place in real time, at least I hope right now we can see a little bit clearer of how close we are to the end game, who's involved and why they're involved. And by the way, I agree with Steve from last night. Pope Francis is merely a placeholder for the hierarchy of the Vatican. This is what I believe. This is my personal and professional belief. You don't have to believe it. I'm not asking you to believe it. But I can see where he is merely a placeholder. Something will happen, and it's very possible that Benedict the 16th, the Pope Emeritus, will resume or retake the papacy, and perhaps with that become known as Peter the Roman. Now, am I trying to force fit prophecy? No, I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm throwing out essentially my theory based on a number of factors, including but not limited to the writings of Chris Putnam and Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, Gary Bell, and others who have talked about this or written about this. Once again, the end game is this new world order, this new governance, this new economic order, and oh, by the way, the last thing. You're going to see in the coming weeks or months, I can't see it lasting beyond October, to be honest with you. I think here shortly you're going to see a shot across the bow for the economic aspect of things. You're going to see what's happening in Cyprus happen in America. You're going to see the devaluation of the dollar. The dollar is being devalued by about 4% a month. You're losing about 4% of your buying power every month. If you don't, you've got to know that. If you go to the grocery store, you've got to know that. If you've bought any big ticket item, you've got to know that. You've got to see it. This cannot and will not stand. The dollar will not be able to sustain. And when that collapses, this is what the end game is. And this was orchestrated and planned out many, many years ago. Now, I don't know if Joe, did I totally confuse you in trying to connect these dots? Because I try to make it as simple, and I try to take it, because I knew I only had like 20 minutes to get into this.
I tell you, a lot of the knowledge about Freemasonry and the secret societies, I already got into and then out of learning about those.
Right.
And I understand, they have their plans, but I understand now more than ever that God has His plans, and those are the ones that we are going to see unfold. These people are running very short on time, and they know that. So
and yeah, exactly.
my care started going to other places, and I stopped researching the Masons because I wanted to know when exactly they were infiltrated. Were the founding fathers that were part of the Masons part of the evil? And I know some of that, at least Ben Franklin was. But all that stuff is no relevance to me anymore because I only care about, my spiritual health. I want to pass along what I'm learning there to the audience and convey, as this is topical and it is important. And people do need to know what this Pope, his background, his allegiances, and organizations he is a part of. That is important of what makes up a person. But I think, you were fine. It was fine. that was about 10 sentences to say, yeah.
Well, okay, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think all of us need to be well grounded in that spirituality and that obedience and allegiance to God. But me, I just like to look at or like to know. All right, well, exactly what's going on, and don't tell me once, but tell me like 12 times so I really understand it. And after you get done telling me 12 times, tell me another 15 times, and write or talk slow and write in crayon, because sometimes I just I want to be sure of what's going on. But all of this is working together. I guess all of this to say this. Everything that you see play out, whether it's at the Vatican or whether it's at the EU or whether it's in the halls of Washington, everything is being orchestrated to play out to a certain end game. And we're seeing this duality especially emerge now, the duality of Satan. Don't forget, what is Satan? The duality of Satan, both man and woman, both sexes. But you're seeing this, and you can compare this to the floors of the Masonic lodges, the checkered, the black and white, the duality that you see there. But we're seeing it now in real life with the duality of the black popes and the white popes.
As above, so below.
So below, et cetera, et cetera. So not only are we seeing, I guess really in my heart and in my soul, in the depths of my heart, I understand now, maybe for the first time ever, I understand how demonic this system is. And once you understand how demonic and how twisted and how unbelievably yuck it is, things like stories like army training in urban areas. It makes perfect sense now to me why they would do this. Reports of people being systematically raped and harassed and genocide and all this. I understand, because all of this is a means to an end that involves the principalities of good and evil, darkness and light. And so, again, it's a practical exercise, but it's also a recognition. And to me, certainly a verification of God and a higher power. So, if that makes me, by the way, a lesser man, as somebody, I heard somebody say that, your affinity toward Jesus and God is not manly. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but if that makes me a lesser man for understanding that, then I'm proud to wear that badge of whatever that would be. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to recognize how evil this is, and the operators of evil. And when you look at and see, because of the deception, and this is my closing remark, the deception that is going to take place at the end, it's going to deceive the very elect. So when you've got religious leaders, like Steve talked about yesterday too, referencing some things,
it could deceive the very elect if it were possible.
Right.
That's why time is cut short. But it will deceive many.
Exactly. And I'll tell you one thing. If we can save one person from that deception by providing the necessary level of detail for their intellectual curiosity, then I'm glad to do it. Now, aside from that, all I can tell you is this: there's this, and I'll end with this. We are seeing the end game play out. We don't have a lot of time, and we're seeing the events take place with such rapidity. I mean, the rapid nature of events, that we have to make sure we're mentally, spiritually, and practically prepared. And by the way, folks, let me ask you this: how are you doing in your personal preparations? Just want to remind everyone, if you didn't do anything today, put it on the list. Make sure you do it tomorrow. Pick up an extra can if you go shopping, extra can of soup, extra thing of coffee, whatever you need to do. Just take one baby step closer to being prepared.
All right, what we're going to do is, since you mentioned Cyprus, I'm going to play a clip of Nigel Farage talking about what he thinks of the whole ordeal, and then we're going to go from there right to break, come back with your phone calls and some more news. 661-244-9839. Here is Nigel Farage. EU wants to steal money from Cyprus bank accounts.
So the Cypriot Parliament is now due to vote on the proposed cuts on Wednesday at about 1600 GMT. But for now, let's get some perspective, shall we, on the levy with the United Kingdom Independence Party MEP Nigel Farage. Mr. Farage, evening to you. Every bailout, of course, comes with strings attached. It's never easy. But can Cyprus afford the price the EU set here?
Well, I mean, what's really happening here is we have an irreconcilable split between the north and the south of Europe. And in the north of Europe, and particularly I'm thinking about Germany, the Netherlands, and Finland, there are very strong political voices saying we do not want to go on bailing out southern European countries. And bear in mind that Cyprus is now the 5th country out of 17 that's needed to be bailed out. And that is why the Germans extracted the terms that they did. But I must say, even in my direst predictions in this Parliament over the years about the way the EU bosses were behaving, never did I think that they would, in a completely unprecedented manner, resort to stealing money from people's bank accounts.
Well, it's because the EU can't afford it can't afford Cyprus to fail, can it? Look at the jitters that have already happened over what's gone on the last couple of days.
Well, it can't afford Cyprus to fail, it can't afford Greece to fail, Portugal, Spain or Ireland. They know that once one country goes, the whole deck of cards will come tumbling down, and countries like Germany will realise absolutely vast losses, possibly as much as €1 trillion. So they are prepared now to do anything, literally anything, to try to keep the euro afloat, and that is why they've now resorted, as I say, to what can only be described as theft. And now they've done it in one country. They're quite capable of doing it in Italy, Spain, Portugal, or anywhere else. And the message that sends to people who've got savings in banks in those countries, certainly if I was them, is get your money out while you can.
But I guess there's also a duty to look after the many expats that are there. In 2010, almost twice as much British money went to Cyprus as transfers from Russia, according to the country's official website. Surely you've got a responsibility to safeguard your constituents' interests there now?
Well, I mean, what the British government have said is that they will stand surety for the British Army soldiers and Air Force people.
But what about all the expats who have been living there 20, 30
people.
years?
The government have had nothing to say on that subject whatsoever. And what the government ought to do is to help the British people living down there, mostly pensioners. But what the British government needs to do is to say to the hundreds of thousands of Brits that are living in southern Spain, for goodness sake, get your money out of that country and have a monthly transfer to pay your bills. And that is what I'd like to see the Chancellor George Osborne do in his budget statement tomorrow in the House of Commons.
What sort of message is this sending to foreign investors? And essentially, they're being taxed to cure a crisis that they had no part in causing, aren't they?
Yeah. Don't invest in the Eurozone. Do not invest anywhere in the Eurozone. You've got to be mad to do so because it's now run by people who don't respect democracy, who don't respect the rule of law, who don't respect the basic principles upon which Western civilization is supposed to be based. They are propping up a Eurozone which in the end is going to collapse in disastrous failure, and they are prepared to do anything to do so. I think that this decision, this German-dominated and led decision, is the worst decision we've seen so far in this whole Eurozone crisis.
And focusing back in on Cyprus, then, if it's completely dependent on its banking industry to survive, if it's forced to accept these taxes, it's going to leave its reputation in tatters and its livelihood in tatters, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that If I were a member of the Parliament in Nicosia, with a vote coming up, it looks like tomorrow now. As funny, isn't it? The vote keeps being delayed and the banks keep being closed for a further day. I think I'd vote against this package. I think, frankly, better to default to the bondholders and keep my most important industry going rather than accept these bullying terms from Brussels.
What about the future for these tax havens, Cyprus being one? A lot of it, various EU leaders have recently said they aren't happy with the way tax havens work. Do you think we'll see some change soon now?
Well, I mean, the EU have been unhappy about so-called tax havens for a very long time, ironically, whilst continuing to turn a blind eye to many activities that go on in Luxembourg. I mean, look, Cyprus finds itself right now in a very difficult, desperate position, but I would say better to officially go bankrupt, to default on international bond obligations, and to do their best to keep a banking industry and to keep some confidence in that country.
Nigel Farage, MEP for
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the brick pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP brick packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilita Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies that work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations that work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
You want answers? I think I can tell you. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
I want to thank Mel for that proprietary introduction. God bless you, Mel. Send more. Just kidding. Folks, welcome.
We love it.
We love it, yeah. Welcome back to hour number 3 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We are Doug and Joe Hagmann, of course. And we want to thank you for tuning in, staying tuned in, and putting up with all of the nuances of the program, whether it be sound issues or other issues. Just thanks for being there. I've got a couple of important things before we get back to the regular topics of the program here. Not first and foremost, but one thing that Steve Quayle just notified me about. This fits in with what we're talking about, essentially. Talking about economic woes. And don't forget, 9 to 11, regular time on Friday, but from 9 to 11, Steve Quayle and the insider known as V, not to be confused with the man formerly known as Prince, now known back as Prince or whatever. Anyway, V will be on the program from 9 to 11. But here's what Steve sent to me, and I had some rumblings of this from another source, so I can tell you what this says, I believe to be very possible. Steve writes as follows, Doug, this is from a source, from someone who sent this to him. Please read on the air. It's extremely important. It says this, gentlemen, I just received a call from a highly agitated bank manager. And by the way, I understand. Who wouldn't be if they were a bank manager, who stated that within 60 days, banks will greatly reduce their hours, days of operation, amount of withdrawals, and a requirement. They're going to institute a requirement to fill out paperwork if the amount is questioned by bank officials. I'm not sure what that means, folks, but okay. Unless the form is completed, money will not be dispersed. What really irritated this manager is that after hearing our statements on the air and receiving years of assurance that our positions and contacts were so much BS, now he hears from corporate people that it is apparently true after all. Now, I'm not sure who the on air is. Anyway, he said, the heck with them, grab the money while you can. The parameters were given. The parameters given were banks open 2 days a week for 4 to 5 hours with below minimum staffs, increased security, and greatly reduced amounts of actual cash in the vault. In other words, you're going to see a disappearance of folding money. As we've talked about, amount of withdrawals will be held to $500 to $2,000 per day. Well, folks, that would take care of one day for me. Anyway,
I could get maybe. Never mind.
You might have 15 minutes. Yeah. Anyway, but seriously, we inject humor because how else can you cope sometimes? Anyway, amounts of withdrawals will be per person held to about $500 to $2,000 per day per customer account. Or I'm sorry, per customer account, not customer. So if you and your wife are in the same account, it's going to be per account, not per person. So my account could only have either my wife or I withdraw, but not both. That level could change at any time. There is no plan, at least not known, for automatic confiscation from accounts, at least not yet. And he said that the banks hold the ownership authority and final disposition of any items found in safety deposit boxes. Folks, we talked about this. In fact, I wrote about this. If it's in the bank,
I better get my diamonds out of the safety deposit box then.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to have to go and retrieve the authenticated rest of these cutout Zapruder film from the JFK assassination. But now, look, withholding mortgage payments could result in expedited foreclosures, like 30-day foreclosures and 15-day sheriff locks on your front door. So, in other words, you can't have your money, but they want theirs. The Federal Reserve could and will initiate the more draconian restrictions on all aspects of private banking and access to any property held by the banks. It could include forfeiture of your primary, or in other words, paid for residence if your summer cottage has a mortgage and you fail to pony up to keeping it current. or any forthcoming restrictions on your accounts. So what they're saying is the banks will have a right of offset. Even if they don't have a legal right of offset, they will have a right of offset. I'm very familiar with this, being close to a banker. A right of offset, meaning if you've got a checking account and you got money in your checking account and you got a mortgage at the same bank, have you ever had this happen to you? You fall behind in your mortgage and all of a sudden you go to write a check at your local supermarket and bingo, you know what? You don't have enough money in your checking account. Because why? Well, they took the money out to pay for your mortgage payment. They've got the right of offset, period. So summer cottage versus primary residence versus car versus whatever, if you fail to pay, well, they could place restrictions on your accounts. Clearly, the only option, according to this author here, is to close accounts or only keep funds that can be paid instantly to keep electric, water, or other critical accounts paid. Cash will be drying up. So, unless people hold precious metals, and that includes the lesser precious in value, but not of, or in, not of importance, such as lead. By the way, ammunition, I was told, is the new currency. So unless people hold precious metals, ammunition, medicines, and so on, you are basically up the creek. Barter will be king. As the colonel said yesterday, the universe is contracting into a black hole. There is no way to escape its pull. That came today from Steve Quayle. Just as an FYI, and again, I heard this from a different source, a little bit different information, but yet the same intent. And before I go any further and turn it back to Joe, I just want to say this. I've been asked. There is a person by the name of Kimberly who says this: I only want to ask for prayer from one I believe is truly unafraid of truth. God knows my need. My name is Kimberly. Please just pray for me. Thank you for all you're doing. May God bless you. Folks, keep Kimberly in your prayers for whatever she is going through. And as I mentioned before, one of our listeners, his wife, and Larry and Lindy. Larry, God bless you, my friend. Lindy, our prayers are with you. Although I didn't really have authorization to read this, I'll just say this very quickly. Lindy's got cancer. It's pretty bad. She's been given 1 to 3 months to live. She needs a miracle. Larry needs strength, courage, wisdom. Well, they both need strength. Please, ladies and gentlemen, pray for Larry and Lindy. Pray for a miracle for Lindy, and pray for strength and wisdom and guidance for Larry. Okay, I just wanted to say that. God bless you. And we all are praying for you immensely. Joe, if you want to get into that as well, the other urgent situation where we've got a Gestapo-like tactic in New York State.
New York State is offering, this from the Daily Coffer, a $500 reward for reporting on illegal and legal gun owners.
You know what? If you've got a gun and you live in New York State, let's say you've got a couple of guns and you live in New York State and your neighbor knows about it and is hard up for money, he can call or she can call the tip line in New York to send troopers out and get a $500 reward for turning you in or reporting for suspected illegal activity regarding the regulations put in place by the recently enacted New York SAFE Act. This is the state's way of enforcing the regulations that most, if not all, gun owners have publicly said they wouldn't comply with. This is eerily reminiscent of 1933 Germany.
Yeah, there's a tip line you guys could call who live in New York to. I won't even give it out because I don't know. There are probably some who will.
Let me give it out. It's 1-800-BITE-ME. And I'm sorry, look,
Look, the spokesman for the New York State Division of Criminal Services defined the program. This program has been in place for more than a year, and it is aimed at getting illegal crime guns off the streets, a goal that every New Yorker can agree with. That's from Janie Cava, the Director of Public Information at New York DCJS. But this article talks about anybody who's in the possession and encourages citizens to report illegal firearm possessions. Now it says illegal, but some say legal.
It says any suspicion of illegal. So it could be legal, right? But if the firearm tip, and this apparently, from what I understand, through the Criminal Justice Services Division, will be able to get a warrant or even a warrantless search of your residence in New York State. Buckle up, people. This is the stuff that revolutions are made of.
That's right. All right, we're going to go to the phone lines, as I know people have been waiting to come on the show. I've been on hold for a while. And I know Dave's been waiting. We're going to go to Dave first from Long Island. Dave, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, gee, thanks a lot, guys.
How are you doing this evening?
Oh, really great now.
Talk to us, Dave. Talk to us, Dave.
Huh?
What's that? Talk to us, Dave. Talk to me. Talk to us.
Oh boy. You made me speechless almost, Doug. Doug.
How'd I do that?
Yeah, okay. Just what you just said. Okay.
About the bank? Or about the
about the New York Safe Act?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you have people that don't like you, whatever,
Well, Dave, I'll tell you what. Why don't you give your address over the air and tell us exactly what your inventory is, and maybe we could become $500 richer. Can you believe that stuff? Isn't that something? Wow.
Yeah.
Not see something, say something. See something, say something, and get paid for it. No.
Yeah. Unbelievable. The devil must be working against me here. I couldn't find what I wanted to find because I was on this thing, but I had some things to say. Now I don't have proof for it now to say, but what I can remember, what I saw, I can't believe that it's just like gone. But what I was going to say is, let me shut this off, that what I read on this prophecy is that that during Holy Week, next week is Holy Week, and there's going to be some kind of a gesture, and I believe it's going to come from the Pope or somebody. I'm pretty sure it's going to be from the Pope, but it's going to be a gesture that it's going to be totally against God. And I don't have it exactly here before me. I can't give you the full thing.
Dave, somebody in the chat posted that CNN reported that the Pope changed his stance on homosexuality, but I find that very hard to believe. And I looked for it, so
I came on here last time. Yeah, I came on here last time, and I said, we just have to wait and see. And I listened to Rick Wiles, and he brought up a couple of points. He mentioned about a Dominican priest, I believe, back in either the 15 or 1600s, that said about the Jesuits being, it was just something bad. And I heard a few bad things. I'm not saying Rick Wiles, everything he says is written on stone, but he came up with a few things, and I'm a little leery. I'm a little worried on it, and what I'm seeing from this site here, and this girl, Maria, a friend that gave it to me, what I seen on here was that, I know you said, Doug, about that what I seen was that Pope Benedict is going to go underground, and he's going to be telling the good church exactly he's going to be in line with the Word of God. But this Pope is going to be totally against the teachings. Basically, I notice we have these little arguments in the chat and everything, and, Catholic, it doesn't get me anymore because I can't be bothered with all that. There's bigger things to worry about than bickering about stupid things and Catholicism and everything like that. But, oh boy, I lost my train of thought. Help me here, Doug. I lost my train of thought. What I was just trying to say.
All right. Well, Dave, look. Here's this.
You had said something. You had said something about the Pope doing it from a certain way about Benedict, and I'm saying that what I saw was that he's going to go underground and teach it. All right. What I'm trying to say is that I really do think, from what I've been seeing, is that this Pope is going to what somebody in the chat said. I might go along with it. I wouldn't doubt it. And that's the bad news that I'm hearing. That's about all I can say.
Well, Dave, what I was trying to get across is this. Satan, or the demonic aspect of things, there's a duality that exists.
Yeah, and it's at the point where it has infiltrated all levels of every important government, every important institution, from local to state to federal, whether it be judges, police,
and religious.
Yes, everything.
It's everything. It's like this metastatic, or it's like a cancer that has metastasized. So it's nothing to take personal, and I know that you're not, Dave. It's not about I'm not. It's not about the Christians, or it's not about what it is about. It's about the political structure within these organizations. For example, when I mentioned about the duality, we've got now two black popes, a reference to the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, and I talked about what the Jesuits are, and what their role is. And the Jesuit order is, like I said, almost a 500-year-old type of covert operation, geopolitical, male-only organization structured as a more or less a secret paramilitary organization. And I know it's a pejorative term, but the head of the Jesuits is called the Black Pope, since he dresses in black and stands in the shadow of the white pope. So you've got, for the first time in history, you've got two black popes and two white popes by abdication on both sides. But the Jesuits' angle to this should not be ignored, only to the extent that they have, there's a control over the Vatican institution of the bank, Vatican institution itself, but also of the Vatican Bank. They've got their tentacles in the UN and the European Commission, the CFR.
Satan's not going to come here to deceive unbelievers because they have nothing to be deceived from. What would be the biggest prize for him? To capture the leadership of the highest religious institution in the world.
Well,
or Christian religion.
Yes. You're exactly right. Now, I don't know if we're helping you out here, Dave, but I got to tell you, it's right now we're seeing the illumination, and I use that word on purpose, of these secret societies, these secret sects, these various groups like the CFR and Trilateral Commission. And I know Alex Jones does a great job talking about them and exposing them. But what about the satanic and Luciferian aspect? What about the ultimate, following it to the ultimate level of good versus evil? And this is what we're talking about. For all the marvels, this is what we're talking about. And saving souls and protecting people to the best of our ability to fight and to go beyond and to fight this demonic aspect of things. We need to do that as individuals. And that's the only way we can do it as individuals. And Dave, you've got a great heart, a great belief. You really do, my friend.
I get into the Word of God, and I read the Bible, and I don't want to brag, I don't want to whatever. I do have a lot of compassion, and I know that, and I thank people that recognize that. I do see a lot of things I don't like in the Catholic Church, improper dress, all things that, just, it's a lot of signs and a lot of just ritual. But when I get into the ritual, if you want to say that, I get deep, 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 deep. So deeper than most people don't even get into. And I immerse myself like into the wounds of Christ. And I will be going next week in Good Friday services. And I know I saw somebody say about Easter is evil and whatever. I don't believe what you want.
But Easter, look, you're celebrating the resurrection. You're not celebrating. You're not celebrating anything else but the resurrection.
Yeah, on Good Friday, I'm recognizing that he died on the cross for me, and even though it isn't the right day or the right hour or whatever like that, that's little stuff to, the fact is that he did die for us, and maybe we should be thinking about that all the time. I know we should, but, this is just one time. Every year we do this or whatever, and anybody could partake of it. And I still say that everybody should look at the Passion of the Christ. And that brings, in fact, I feel bad that I haven't looked at it yet, and I got to look at it and bring tears to my eyes. And if I don't get tears to my eyes, well, I feel there's something wrong with me. Because when you see him scourged, like they do it in that picture, boy, oh boy, if you don't cry a tear or two, I don't know really where your really heart is.
That was one of the most incredible films I've watched. And I'm not a moviegoer, but when I saw that, Dave, I got to tell you, holy cow! The brutality.
When they ripped that flesh out of his back and they just yanked that buckle, the buckles, the hooks that went into his back. And those Romans were big. They were tough guys. And they put those right into his back. And he just got up there shaking again. And they turned him over on the other side. He just denounced them. And they even went like, whoa, he's getting up. And he just got back up with all the strength that the Holy Spirit gave him. Of course, he's Jesus. And they say, hey, we're going to get him again. And they turned him over and they gave it on the other side. And then he still got up. But oh no, that's right. He was down on the ground after that, after what they did to him. That's right. The guy came in and said, you're not supposed to kill him. After
right.
that. But,
right.
I just wanted to say that. Man. I just wanted to say that I do see a lot of stuff in the church that I feel that a lot of people are going to buy maybe into this new pope because, like I said, there's a lot of Catholics that accept homosexuality and all these things. And I know that they're in the church. I've met a few that, I haven't, you could just tell. I could tell by the way they talk, and different things like that. Some of them talk very girlish and stuff like that. And, if I talked like that too, you wouldn't know that too, right?
Well, I got to tell you, I've known some effeminate-sounding guys, not many, but a couple who were quite heterosexual, at least to my knowledge. But then again, but I got to tell you, though, that doesn't matter. What does matter is the spirit in which the entire belief system is being redefined instead of reinforced. There's this redefining homosexuality into a normal behavior, and the justification of homosexuality as some sort of scientific reason behind it. No, it's a corruption of morality. It is not based in some sort of genetic predisposition. At least that's my belief. Does that make me a homophobe? No, I mean that indicates I'm afraid of homosexuals. I'm not afraid of homosexuals. I'm not a homophobe. Okay, but one thing I don't tolerate is the perversion and the meddling and the propaganda.
Right. I mean, these people got to realize it's the same thing as if I'm hanging out and I'm single. If I'm hanging out with a bunch of guys that are cheating on their wives and they're committing adultery, it's the same thing. It's bad.
That's right.
It's against the laws of God. And you're not going to inherit the kingdom of God if you're doing that. And the same is fornicating. If you're going out with all different girls and having sex with them and you're not married to them, that's the way it is. That's bad, too. You're not going to gain entrance into heaven unless you turn from that sin and ask for forgiveness from Jesus. You're not going to get into heaven. But they don't believe it, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say on that.
Repentance.
But,
repentance.
Doug, I just want to say before I leave, again, I want to reiterate, if you have the time or whatever, next week, anybody else, any Catholics out there, and hey, look, I'm a real Catholic, and if you don't like what I said, well, that's the way it is. Next week is Holy Week, and what I saw, and I can't believe I can't get this, but it says something about that there's going to be a gesture, so I think it's going to be a wicked gesture from the Pope. So you heard it from me. If you see something, then maybe if I find this, then maybe I could give this website to you, because this is something, if it comes true, it would sort of be authentic, correct? Maybe?
Well, perhaps. If you see something and it is consistent with what you read.
Gesture. A wicked gesture.
All right.
Possibly from the Pope next week during Holy Week. So I will be very attuned to seeing all his actions.
All right. Well, we should point out that he failed to genuflect in front of the tabernacle. Now, those people, the Catholics out there, understand what kind of affront that does represent. That's correct. Yes. So
when did this happen?
The first Mass he celebrated. Wow. He did not genuflect, which is bending at the knee in front of the tabernacle. Now that's for non-Catholics out there. That is a system of respect. Okay, so that's that's always been done by every pope. At least in recent times, and every priest and every bishop and archbishop and monsignor and so on. So that's something that happened, and so that's already part of it.
I didn't want to believe this, Doug. Like I said, I left it open last time when I said that we should wait and see. But now seeing everything more and seeing the lightning strike on the Vatican and that thing in the Bible where it says something about Satan coming down.
Yeah.
Just making more sense.
All right, Dave. Look, my friend, God bless you. Thank you for your call. Appreciate
God bless
that.
You.
All right, my man.
Yes. Stay safe. Right. Stay safe, both of you guys.
All right, you too.
And don't let anybody try to collect the $500 reward.
Yeah, well, let's see. His name is Dave, and of course, he lives and he's got AKs and Joe, Dave, you came across something very important. I think that we need to cover right away, and that's what.
Yeah, breaking news. This from Russia Today: North Korea threatens to attack U.S. bases in Okinawa and Guam. And this was just breaking news that just came out. It goes on to say, North Korea has threatened to target U.S. air bases in Okinawa and Guam as it issued an air raid alert on Thursday and ordered its military to stand ready, the country's state media reported. The United States is advised not to forget that our precision target tools have within their range the Andersen Air Force Base on Guam and the B-52. And where the B-52 takes off, as well as the Japanese mainland where nuclear-powered submarines are deployed, and the Navy bases on Okinawa. North Korea command spokesman quoted saying by KCNA news agency, the air raid alert was issued at 9:32 a.m. local time. That would be 12:32 a.m. GMT. With military units and civilians told to take cover, Korean Central Television said. A news report by South Koreans Yonhap news agency suggested that the warning appears to be part of a drill, though it has not been confirmed by Pyongyang.
Now, I got to tell you this. Anything that's coming from North Korea, for example, there was a breach at some banks, according to, or some hacking done very sophisticated hacking done, it was attributed to North Korea. Who's behind? North Korea is the proxy for who? For China. Understand that the superpowers, you've got China, you've got Russia, you've got the United States, are all lining up at this very moment in time. And these are war games, or not war games. These are non-shooting war battles that are taking place. When you've got the cyber attacks attributed to North Korea, that's actually from China. What's taking place here? This precedes. This happens before the actual shooting war. Oh, and by the way, what's going to happen here? You've got the Syrian situation heating up and heating up and heating up and heating up. You're going to have the breakout of the third of a global war. It's going to start regionally, and then, of course, it's going to involve all of the countries. What could this lead to? Well, it could lead to almost, I don't want to say uninhabitable, but you're going to have the entire northern hemisphere of the globe perhaps contaminated by an exchange of nuclear weapons. And that, of course, in the long-range planning, you see the long-range planning by people like the Bush family and Soros and other people who are making their homesteads in the southern hemisphere. Did you know that? Did you know that? Where people are the people of wealth and of knowledge and of royalty are making their homes or buying land in the southern hemisphere? That's taking place. Well, where does that leave us? Well, certainly, Joe, you mentioned before the show when we were talking about the Georgia Guidestones, the population reduction. Okay, could this play a part of it? I think it could. Will it? I don't know. But once again, are we getting this from the mainstream media? Of course not. We're getting propaganda from the mainstream media. Are we getting this from talk radio? No. You know what we're getting from talk radio? The left-right political dogmas, the Democrats versus Republicans, liberals versus conservatives. And if you're listening to this in the UK or wherever, Canada, wherever you might be, like, I don't know, Labour versus the Tories and so on and so forth, it's a political duopoly trap where the voting outcome can only swing in two main directions, and it's all it is the Hegelian dialectic deception politics. Again, people, it's a tactic of the Hegelian dialectic deception politics by creating, infiltrating, controlling multiple sides to further their own agenda. Of course, we see this thesis plus antithesis, or antithesis, more appropriately, to synthesis. The present focus of many media corporations on, for example, Muslim terror threats or domestic terror threats that we see being acted upon by DHS, especially after the attacks of 9/11. It's all part of the strategy to keep tension alive, to divide groups by fear, to polarize people's frustration and anger towards this synthesized enemy or its controlled opposition. Folks, understand that rather than, of course, the real fascist threat from the secretive power structures that we talked about before. This. Oh, and by the way, the other part of this too, which we really didn't get into, but we need to talk about this week and into next week as well, the artificial global food price crisis versus the centralization of food management structure. For example, we mentioned Codex Alimentarius, the UN agenda, genetically modified food controversies, and so on and so forth. We need to get into that because this is all part of this soft kill, this New World Order agenda. And if you think I'm on this New World Order kick, you're right, because when it comes right down to it, the bottom line, the very issue is this Masonic, satanic, Luciferian, insider infiltration cult, if you will. That involves every aspect of our lives. We need to take a look at the macro, at the big picture, as opposed to this claptrap talk radio of right versus left. Hey, Karl Rove or whoever is going to be he's the savior. He's going to save everything. No, it's not that. That's just bread and circus.
We're going to go back to the phones. We're going to go to Pierre. He's on hold and waiting for a while. Pierre, thanks for calling. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Joe. Long time.
Yeah. What's on your
talk
mind?
to us.
I don't even know where to begin here, but that whole issue, like with Korea that you were talking about, that's news to me. I look at it as, one part, I look at it as one half reality, because what we're looking at here is something that hasn't happened in 70 years. It doesn't matter what the United Nations says. North Korea has abrogated the armistice of 1953, which for all intents and purposes mean that now an official state of war does exist. It's no longer technical. Okay? What does that translate to? What does that mean? And why haven't the bullets flown down range yet? Because right now this is a game of brinksmanship. It's very delicate. It's tit for tat. No one is backing down from this. And you're right, Doug, that North Korea is more of the, I would like to look at them as being nothing more than a jaw-jacking mouthpiece for China, while China carefully plots its course to do whatever it needs to get done. But I ultimately think that what's going on inside Korea, Kim Jong-un's not in control, obviously. He's too young. He's inexperienced. He has no military experience whatsoever, and I'm sure those generals that are under him, instead of just taking the man out outright, they're using him to whatever end they need to use him for. I think everything has come to a head. They decided enough is enough of this armistice, and it's time to let's press this as far as we can, to a point to probably where the People's Republic of China can't even control them. To talk about them attacking Anderson Air Force Base in Guam, that's laughable. And because the only thing they're going to be able to do is launch a long-range missile off, which could probably blow up upon it, taking off its platform, or it'll get shot down. In either case, North Korea is done for. And to threaten Japan, a lot of people don't understand this about Japan. Japan will, they will talk amongst themselves in their hierarchy, and then they will negate that article that was placed upon them to maintain a quote self-defense force and go full-blown Imperial Japan again. Not like how they were in World War II, going off and doing the stupid stuff that they did under General Tojo and Emperor Hirohito. It's more of a new Japanese army and navy that will not tolerate threats like that. They won't do it. They will strike. Make no mistake about it. Japan is not afraid. They're just waiting for that circumstance to come down their way. Now, that's the issue with them. The issue now with Obama in the Middle East is actually pretty interesting. His limo broke down, allegedly because of diesel fuel being put in his limo. I find that to be quite funny, but there's just too many physical and spiritual aspects that are happening in reference to him being there that I find extremely disturbing. When I looked at the Jerusalem Post, the writers there were like, what is he doing here, for instance? They don't want him there.
We don't want him here.
Pierre, I got to tell you this. Pierre, I got to tell you this. I've talked to people in Israel last night, and they said that it is if they could physically push him out of the country, they would, out of the country of Israel. I've got friends in Israel, and they don't want Obama there at all. And it's I heard the word abomination many times during that conversation with at least one of my contacts in Israel. So go ahead, finish.
What I'm thinking is one of two things will happen, maybe three, but I'm only down to two. One, something very bad's going to happen to Obama while he's in Israel. Someone or a group of someone is going to ensure that he doesn't go to the Dome of the Rock like he wants to. under IDF security. Hamas has pretty much made that perfectly clear. That's a declaration of war. And there's no telling if they're going to wait for him to leave, afterwards and then deal with Israel, or they're going to just have, the fortitude to go and let's take him on. Screw it. We've got nothing to lose. I can see that drama playing out in a very horrific manner. Or he does leave, accomplishes whatever he wants, whatever Netanyahu's got going on in his head is in the Knesset is they're completely off kilter, off base with the touch and tone of their people. That when he does leave, something very bad happens to Israel. Now, all of you know the track record of Barack Hussein Obama. Wherever this man goes, whoever he meets, or whatever he does, some calamity of magnitude happens. It never fails. Never fails. That one high school girl or junior high girl that, I guess, sung for him recently, her sister was killed with bullets placed in her head. Now, was that a connection to that? Doubtful. But she was the innocent, probably more likely the innocent victim of a very bad crime. But the fact of the matter is that no matter wherever he goes, things happen in a very negative manner.
Wait a second, Pierre. Who got killed? What were the circumstances?
Oh, it was a story that came out, I think, about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. It was a girl. I can't remember her name to save my life, but her sister was killed. Now, the relation to it was simple. She had performed for the president. I guess she sang a song for him or whatever.
Oh, okay.
At one of his, or what have you. And then not long after he was gone, her sister winds up getting killed in a crime gone bad.
Right,
And,
that was that drive-by shooting, and in fact, that had connections to Sandy Hook, which by the way, we're working on some very interesting. And sorry for taking your time, but we're working on some very interesting aspects of Sandy Hook that have not made it to the media, and not made it to any listeners who have not written about it. All is not what it appears to be. And yes, there is a connection to Obama and Sandy Hook, but not in the way one would think, not a direct connection, but a couple of separations. But go on. Go ahead.
The thing here is that all the signs are there. For those of us that are in chat room, those that are listening abroad, whether it's in the continental United States or beyond our borders, you all know what's going on. You all know me better than the BSU who play head games with any of you. The threat is real, and it's on all kinds of levels. All kinds of levels. One of the biggest threats now that we face, now I'm going to go into the other subjects here, is the issue of what's happening in Cyprus. I've never seen a more brazen act of crime and theft being promoted by a governmental entity than what the European Union has done against the people of Cyprus. Telling the Cypriot government to withhold 10% of everyone's earnings. Folks, if this is not a wake-up call for you to get your money out and get things changed to convert it while you can here in the continental United States, I don't know what will be. Maybe it's going to take V to speak on Friday to get people revved up to do stuff. I've certainly talked to quite a few people about things that have been going on, especially what happened in Cyprus. Like, you really think it's going to come over here, Pierre? For real? You really think that? That's not going to happen here. What world are you on, and how we're living in the same physical plane of existence is beyond me. The fact is, it's coming. The fact is that we are on the verge of civil war. Calling it, see it. 1.6 billion rounds by DHS, and Congress is asked, and DHS is being silent. It's in your face, people. It's in your face. And like I said, to those who are prepared, that's good. But don't get the smarts in your head or get this big, head on your shoulder thinking that you're going to be able to take on what's coming.
You're not going to. You're not going to be able to take on a couple of Apache attack helicopters with your 45 or your pistol. But however, Pierre, and folks listening to this, look, we did not ask for this fight, correct? The fight is being brought to us. All right. Now, there's an interesting story out there. I don't remember the name of it, but what what you can do with or what one pistol can do against an army, and there is, of course, the proper way to fight. And of course, look, we do have a chance, and we have to play it smart. So, yeah, but Pierre, you're right. I mean, we're not going to be able to go head to head with an Apache any more than we can go head to head with a drone, any more than we can go head to head with a full scale SWAT team, 5 seconds after they enter your house. It's not going to happen. We have to be smarter than that.
A lot of the way you're going to be smart, and it's simple, folks. It's very simple. It's not a rocket scientist equation. You are prepared, but be prepared as best you can. You just keep your eyes and ears open. When things do go downrange, when stuff happens downrange, you have choices to make. You can either stay where you're at, you can engage, or you can get out. If you're not all that combat savvy, get out, live to fight another day, but at least try to make efforts to learn how to defend yourself. For those of you who are going to go downrange and do your thing, know what you're doing. You only got one life. There is no medevac. You don't have organic support like the military has or these paramilitary forces have. They got all this stuff. I'm not saying you're going to lose. All I'm saying is think smarter, not harder. My thing to everyone else is that I guess what it boils down to is faith in the Lord and knowing your role into what is to come. Everyone's going to have a role to play. You and Joe's roles are clearly defined. Mine is still evolving, I do what I can, and there's still much more to be done. I try to keep people as best informed as I can. For me, information is more valuable than any bullet or nuclear weapon in the world, because that information, depending on how credible it is, could either save lives or it could cause you to do something that you don't really need to do, which would promote the needs of the enemy. That's where that wisdom comes in, okay? My biggest thing to everyone that's hearing my voice and that's listening to the show is just wait, be patient, and just be ready. And if you do know something, and if you do have credible intel, whether it's image intelligence, if it's electronic, if it's communications, get it out in the open, get it in YouTube, or send it to Doug and Joe. Call onto my show, whatever. But hopefully it's legit that we can get the word out to people. Because the more you know, the better you're going to be. It's like what Doug was saying earlier in reference to understanding what the enemy does, like what the enemy is and so forth. You're not going to know anything unless you really do your homework, folks. And like I said, we don't know how much longer we have before they put the clamp down on the internet. All I'm saying is we live in very interesting times. We live in very trying times. And this is a time where stupidity is going to reign in favor of the enemy if we make a mistake. I say we as we the people. We the people of America, we the people of the Lord, because that's what they're counting on, is for us to make the mistakes. You know what, folks? You can't afford to make mistakes anymore. This is a game for keeps, and this is coming down to the numbers. It's all coming down to the numbers. So,
Pierre, I got to tell you, stupid people will get you killed, and sometimes you just got to get out of the way what's coming, Pierre, plug your show.
My show's called Exposing the Enemy. My co-host is God Sent Angel. We're on both freedomizerradio.com and we're on blogtalkradio.com/freedomizer. We're on tonight on Wednesday and we're on Fridays. We're on from 10:30 p.m. to midnight Pacific Daylight, and for those that are in the mountain area, it's 11:30 to 0100 in the morning. Okay, that's the show. It's called Exposing the Enemy. It's both on freedomizerradio.com and it's on blogtalkradio.com/freedomizer. By all means, feel free to listen, but be advised to anyone who wants to call in. The show time is only an hour and a half until we can get better slots and better things going our way. It's only an hour and a half. So it's pretty much going to be whatever the topic is, and if we can get callers in and squeeze them in, that's fine. All I ask, as you would ask, respect, folks. No racial remarks, no stupidity. Because what we're talking about here, not only on my show, but on the Hagmann and countless other shows that are out there, is we're asking you to have an open heart and an open mind. And we also pray for sanity. We need that. Because as the times the fuse has been lit, folks, it has been lit. It's not just sitting there dormant. It's going to go like Mission Impossible where it goes boom in the end. We're just asking that you understand the severity of what is going on. None of us here who do radio are jokers. We're telling it like it is. Because one day, we're not going to be on the air anymore. And then you're going to think, oh, I really should have listened. But by that time, you're waiting for your head to get cut off at a guillotine, or you're going to be interned in a FEMA camp. Bad day, either way you look at it. I'd rather side on the side of the Lord and listen to people who know this is how you survive. This is how you make it. Okay? But again, the show's called Exposing the Enemy. You're all more than welcome to listen. And thank you, Doug and Joe, for letting me be on.
Thanks, Pierre.
All right, my friend.
Take care.
God bless.
You too. Take care.
All right, man.
We have about 2 minutes. One more call. We're going to go to 480. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann
Hello?
Report. That's you.
Hi, guys. This is Mary, also known as Luke, in the chat room. I just wanted to say thank you guys for what you do. I have come through some very traumatic things in my life, and randomly came across your show, and it really, you guys have pulled me through some rough stuff, and I just want you to know how much you're appreciated.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Mary. We look, we do our best. We appreciate your call like this, and we hope to keep assisting you and others get through the rough patches, inspire as well as inform, and instruct as well as also listen too. Listen to what you've got to say. And we really appreciate you. We really appreciate you as a listener. We really do. And any way we can help you, uplift you, because you know what? We're all in this together, aren't we? Isn't that what it's all about? We're all in this together.
Yeah, and that's what's comforting. I noticed when Sandy used to call in a lot, I could relate to her a lot, because for someone living alone, I'm a single woman living alone, it's getting scary out there. It's like, how do I know when it's time to go? Where do I go? What do I pack?
Hey, Mary.
A single woman living alone, it's just,
I know you.
it's kind
I
of
know you
scary.
asked. I know you asked, and I did call Sandy today, and she did call me back, and I missed the call. So she's still alive and kicking. I haven't talked to her, but I'll call her back tomorrow. And so just wanted to let you know that.
That's good to know. Yeah, because she hasn't called in a while. We haven't heard from her or Lucy or some of the other ones, the regulars. But, no, I'm having fun in the chat room. I finally got that figured out. So, anyhow, it's really been a blessing for me. And I'm going to keep listening, and hopefully when things hit the fan and people have to go places, somehow is there any way we can connect outside of the program?
90
I
seconds.
asked you about that one time, and you guys were going to look into that.
We are working on a couple of different things, including but not limited to satellite, shortwave, and some other methods. And we also have the ability to communicate In fact, we've got redundancy built into this program outside of the United States. That said, we are not going to go down without a fight. Let me tell you that. And every penny, every dime, every nickel that we get as a listener supported broadcast, we reinvest into the program for that purpose and related purposes. So we're not going to leave you alone. All right, Mary, you've taken us out. God bless you. Thank you so much for the call. We are at the close of the program.
If you could just...
I'm sorry, Mary. I cut her off. No, we got to close out. We only got a couple seconds left. God bless each and every one of you. We will be here same time tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Please join us. We'll see you then.
God bless.